Chapter 5, Elias proves innocence. Previously, after securing a promotion by trapping the enemy ace with an obscure mechanic, Elias now faces a lifetime ban if he makes another mistake under the league's strict surveillance. With Jax vowing to expose him as a fraud and a hotfix scheduled to patch his signature exploit, Elias must prove his worth without relying on glitches. Now, Chapter 5 begins. The air in the practice room had curdled, thick with the scent of ozone and stale coffee. It wasn't just the humidity, it was the weight of 36 eyes fixed on a single terminal where Elias sat. His hands rested limply on the desk, detached, as if they belonged to a corpse. Standing over him was a man in a severe gray suit. The insignia of the league's anti-cheat division gleamed on his lapel, a badge of judgment. He held a tablet displaying a cascade of red data streams, each line an accusation. Anomalous input patterns, the investigator said. His voice was flat, cutting through the silence like a scalpel. Specifically, frame-perfect execution during animation locks, statistically impossible for human reaction time. We are seizing the hardware under Section 9 of the Competitive Integrity Act. He reached out, fingers hovering over the cable, connecting Elias' mechanical keyboard to the tower. Wait, Captain Jax stepped forward, a grin plastered on his face that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. He leaned against the glass partition of the booth, addressing the room rather than the investigator. Don't just pull the plug, look at the heat map. No human reacts in 3 frames, he's injecting inputs. It's a script kiddie setup, plain and simple. Jax turned his gaze to Elias, dripping with mock pity. Ban him, give me his slot. The team can't afford this liability before regionals. Coach Vance stood near the back, arms crossed, his face a mask of strained neutrality. He looked at Elias, then at the sponsor logos plastered on the wall, and finally at Jax. The calculation was visible in his eyes, one rookie analyst versus the team captain and the league's wrath. Elias, Vance said, his voice tight. If the data says you're using macros, I can't defend you. Sponsorships have morality clauses. One scandal and we lose funding for the whole academy. Isolation tightened around Elias' throat. This was social death. In the esports ecosystem, a ban wasn't just a suspension, it was erasure. His name would be scrubbed from leaderboards, his contract voided, his reputation tagged permanently as toxic. He would become a cautionary tale told to trainees. The investigator's finger touched the cable. I'm flagging the account for a lifetime ban based on static analysis. There is no appeal process for confirmed scripting. Elias didn't plead. He didn't shout about innocence or beg for mercy. He slowly lifted his head, his expression unreadable. Give me 5 minutes, Elias said. The room paused. Jax let out a sharp, barking laugh. 5 minutes to delete the logs, nice try. Not to delete, Elias corrected. He stood, pushing his chair back with a scrape that echoed loudly. To calibrate, the anomaly isn't a script. It's a driver conflict interacting with my predictive buffering technique. If you seize the hardware now, you destroy the evidence of asterisk how I'm playing. Let me run a diagnostic calibration on the seized hardware. If I can't replicate the timing manually in a controlled environment, ban me. But if I can, you owe me an apology. The investigator hesitated, glancing at his tablet. Predictive buffering is legal, but rarely executed at this level without assistance. Very well, 5 minutes, but you do it in the glass booth, full surveillance, no external peripherals. Elias nodded and walked toward the private training booth, a small, soundproofed cube with transparent walls that made him feel like an exhibit in a zoo. As he stepped inside, the door sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Through the glass, he saw Claire, the owner's daughter and primary sponsor, watching intently from the sidelines. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable, but her eyes were sharp, tracking his every move. Jax pressed his face against the glass, smirking. Enjoy your last game, fraud. Elias ignored him. He sat, cracked his knuckles, and loaded a custom training map. It was a barren arena designed specifically to stress test input latency variance. Lines of code scrolled rapidly as he initialized the diagnostic tool. This map measures the delta between your key press and the server tick, Elias explained, his voice amplified by the booth speakers so the entire room could hear. My previous performance relied on queuing actions during animation lock frames, a legal mechanic known as predictive buffering. High APM players do it instinctively, but I've refined the rhythm. He looked directly at Jax through the glass. It's not magic, Jax, it's rhythm, and you're off beat. Jax's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second before hardening. Prove it. Live 1v1, right here in the diagnostic tool. If you can replicate those impossible timings without your scripts, the ban is void. But if you hesitate, you're done. Agreed, Elias said. The investigator tapped his tablet, linking Jax's terminal to Elias' instance. Match start, monitoring input graphs live. On the large monitors surrounding the practice room, 2 windows appeared. On the left, Jax's character, a heavy-hitting brute, spawned with aggressive posture. On the right, Elias' avatar, a nimble skirmisher, stood still. Below them, real-time graphs began to scroll, jagged lines representing every keystroke and mouse click. Jax didn't wait. He surged forward, launching a barrage of attacks designed to force a defensive error. His playstyle was explosive, relying on raw speed and intimidation. His input graph spiked wildly, a chaotic mess of high-frequency clicks. Elias didn't retreat. He moved forward, meeting Jax's aggression with a strange, fluid dance. He wasn't blocking, he was canceling. Every time Jax's character swung a weapon, Elias dipped his shoulder, interrupting his own auto-attack animation before it completed, only to fire a shot in the split-second window where Jax was vulnerable. The crowd gasped. On the screen, the input graph for Elias wasn't a smooth line. It was irregular, jagged, distinctly human. There were micropauses, slight variations in pressure, the natural tremor of a living hand. Yet, every single input landed on the exact same server tick as Jax's recovery frames. He's doing it manually, someone whispered in the back. Jax grew frustrated. His attacks became sloppier, his APM spiking inefficiently as he tried to overwhelm Elias with volume rather than precision. "Stop dancing," Jax shouted, slamming his keys. "Fight me." "I am fighting you," Elias replied calmly. "You're just listening to the wrong beat." Elias activated the chainbinder mechanic. In previous matches, critics claimed he used a glitch to make the chains unbreakable. Today, there was no glitch. He relied purely on frame-perfect manual inputs, weaving energy chains around Jax's character with surgical precision. He predicted Jax's panic-induced dash before Jax even pressed the button, placing a trap exactly where the captain would land. Jax dashed, the chains snapped shut. The room went silent. Jax's character was immobilized, trapped in a loop of stuns that allowed Elias to chip away at his health bar without taking a single hit in return. It wasn't a flashy kill, it was a dismantling. Elias stripped away Jax's defenses layer by layer, demonstrating a mastery of the game's underlying rhythm that bordered on the supernatural, yet remained undeniably organic. With Jax's character at 1 HP, Elias stopped. He didn't deliver the final blow immediately. He waited, letting the tension stretch until Jax frantically mashed his escape key. Then, with a single, clean input, Elias finished the match. Asterisk victory. The word flashed across the main screen. The input graph froze, displaying the final analysis. The investigator stared at his tablet, brow furrowed. He zoomed in on the data, scrolling through the millisecond timestamps. "Input variance is within human limits," he muttered, more to himself than the room. "High outlier, definitely, but legitimate. The timing aligns with server ticks perfectly, but the source is biological, not digital." He looked up, closing the case file on his screen. The ban is void. The anomaly was superior game sense, not software. A collective exhale swept through the practice room. The tension broke, replaced by a murmur of awe and confusion. Jax ripped his headset off, his face flushed with a mixture of rage and humiliation. He had expected to see a bot. Instead, he had been outplayed by a human who seemed to see the matrix of the game itself. The booth door hissed open. Elias stepped out, removing his headset. He didn't gloat. He simply walked to the center of the room and waited. Claire stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. She stopped between Elias and Jax, her presence commanding immediate attention. "My father doesn't invest in cheaters," she said, her voice cool and clear. "He invests in winners. You just proved which category Elias falls into, Captain." She turned her gaze to Jax, eyes narrowing. "Your accusation was baseless and damaging to this team's brand. If I see another attempt to sabotage a roster member without concrete proof, I will trigger a full sponsorship review of your own contract. Do we understand each other?" Jax clenched his jaw, fists tightening at his sides. He wanted to argue, to scream that it was luck or some new kind of hack, but the data was public. The investigator had cleared him. To push further would make him look petty and insecure. "Understood," Jax muttered, the words tasting like ash. He wouldn't apologize, not really, but the concession was enough. He turned on his heel and stormed toward the locker rooms, shoulders hunched. Coach Vance exhaled, rubbing his temples. He looked at Elias, and for the first time there was no threat in his eyes, only grudging respect mixed with caution. "You're valuable, Elias, too valuable to lose, but you're also dangerous. That display, it draws attention we might not be ready for." Vance straightened his jacket. "You're reinstated to the starting lineup for tomorrow's public stream match against the rival team, but there's a caveat. To prevent further controversy regarding your mechanics, you are restricted to a specific champion pool. No experimental picks, no obscure glitches. Play safe." Elias nodded slowly. He knew what this meant. A restricted pool was a trap. It limited his strategic impact, forcing him to play within narrow boundaries where his unique innovations couldn't shine. It was a way to keep him useful but contained. "Acceptable," Elias said. Claire offered him a faint, approving nod. "Prove you're the latter, Elias, a winner, not just a miracle worker." As the team began to disperse, the atmosphere shifting from hostile to cautiously optimistic, Elias returned to his station to pack his gear. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, expecting a message from the coach or perhaps Claire. Instead, the screen displayed an anonymous DM from an encrypted account. The username was a string of symbols, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakable: the Mechanical God. It was the rival ace, the player widely considered the best in the league, a man who hadn't lost a solo queue match in 3 years. Elias opened the message. "I saw the diagnostic. You're holding back." The text scrolled, cold and direct. "If you play safe against my team tomorrow, I will break your hands in game. Don't bother with your restrictions. Come at me with everything or don't come at all. Tomorrow isn't about survival. It's a hunt." Elias stared at the screen, the glow illuminating his face in the dimming room. The relief of clearing his name evaporated, replaced by a surge of adrenaline that tightened his chest. The league thought they had contained him with a restricted champion pool. Jax thought he had failed, but the real threat had just issued a challenge that ignored all rules. Tomorrow's match was no longer just about keeping his job. It was a targeted execution, and the hunter was already waiting in the lobby. In the next chapter, as Elias prepares to face the Mechanical God's challenge, he discovers that his victory has triggered a sinister new threat. Coach Vance is forcing him to sign a mandatory psychological evaluation that will bench him for the most critical match of the season.